Some people have changed deer hunting forever, and Ron Wilmore is one of them.
Larry Zock, a very well-known artist, has a picture of old rivals.
When Larry was there, I showed him the deer, and I told him then, I said, you need to do some kind of a print on this deer, well, an art print on this deer. And his response was, well, it's so big, it's going to be hard to make it look realistic or whatever.
For decades, he managed Clinton Lake, transforming it from a mess into a Pope and Young producing hotspot for all to enjoy on public land.
And it took 2 or 3 years, but it finally started kicking in. Over the period of the whole hunt, 75% of the bucks killed on that hunt made Pope and Young.
That's got to be one of the most successful management practices documented for whitetails.
In this episode, Ron takes us inside 50 years of bow hunting history, deer management, and never before seen footage.
We were driving around and came around a picked cornfield, and that buck and another buck were getting ready to fight. It was the first time we'd ever done anything with a camera. Nobody knew what we were doing at all, and we videotaped them for like 5 minutes trying to kill each other.
If you love whitetails, this one is a must watch. Here we go.
There's 2 things that I always hear on the biggest bucks killed. Number 1, it came from some kind of refuge where it had a chance to get an extra year or 2 older. And number 2, that's the first time I hunted that stand that year.
Ron, I've been looking forward to this. A mutual friend made an introduction, and it was hard to research you because I like to research people. And then, I've picked up pieces and we've got a chance to chat here, and I'm extremely excited for this. For folks that don't know who you are, and if they've been reading magazines, they know the name. But in my age and demographic, I'm pretty much all digital. So,
right.
Who are you, Ron?
Well, basically, I'm retired right now, but I worked my whole life as a biologist of some type. After I got out of college, I actually lived in Florida for 3 years and worked on the whole chain of lakes between Orlando and Okeechobee, doing bioassays and things like that. And then got the opportunity to move back to Illinois, which I preferred because I really don't like hot weather that well. And went back to Illinois, and at that point in time, got a job offered at Illinois Power in Decatur, and they were just starting to build the Clinton power station, nuclear power station. And when I started there running the water treatment plant, basically, and the lake was not even there when I started. So
wow.
So it's
what year was that?
Like 1976.
Okay.
And then I went through the whole thing there, and then later on they built a chemistry lab and a biology lab, and I ended up, later on, I worked in the chemistry lab for a while, and then I ended up being a supervisor of the biology lab. Mm-hmm. And so I done all kinds of different work. I did all the fisheries work, a lot of fisheries work for years on Clinton Lake, and water quality work, algae, and everything else on Clinton Lake for years. And I like doing a lot of different types of biological work.
Yeah. And how long have you been bow hunting?
Over 50 years. And that tells you I'm old. So
50 years. What?
When I started, they didn't have compounds, so that'll tell you how long I've been bow hunting. So.
What was that transition like? Because there's always the progression and debate of technology.
Right.
Did you feel like a sellout when you went from traditional archery to compound, or was it not that big of a change?
No, not really. I mean, it was pretty tough with a recurve, and actually, hunting with a recurve, I hunted 5 years before I killed my first deer with a bow.
Wow.
And that was with a recurve, because we didn't have the number of deer we have now either. But it wasn't that bad of a transition. I did a lot of shooting and that kind of thing, and then ended up with a compound later. So.
What was your first recurve bow? Do you remember?
Probably a bear.
Bear.
Yeah.
That's what everyone shot.
Yeah. They were pretty popular back then. So.
Yeah. And so, what year did you end up shooting your first deer? If you had to guess.
Probably about 1980, maybe, something like that.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, that's fascinating. And
maybe about 1980. Or actually, maybe a little before that.
Okay.
I started really bow hunting about when I was in college, so it was like, about 1970, something like that. So.
Okay. And your background sounded more with water and fisheries and things of that nature. How did you get bit by the whitetail bug, or when did you become, because I can tell you love whitetails. It's very clear. How did you get bit by the whitetail bug, or how did that progress?
Well, I always loved deer hunting, and big bucks and so forth. But after bow hunting for years and years there, and then when I took the job at Illinois Power, we had a lot of good public ground to hunt around the lake there and that kind of thing. So I just kept on bow hunting, and I just I always looked at things as far as management and everything is concerned. I looked at it from a perspective of a bow hunter versus a gun hunter, and that makes a lot of difference. So.
That era of hunting, how many people were avid bow hunters of that era too? I mean, it was probably a very small.
Yeah, there's not a lot. I mean, it was just starting to grow at
Yeah.
that point in time, and mostly everybody gun hunted, but not a lot of bow hunters at that point in time.
So like at that time, if there was 10 gun hunters, there might have been like 2 bow hunters for every 10.
Right. Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And so it's just fascinating because there's so many different things I want to talk about. That's the challenge here. And so you were hired to be the biologist for the power plant that was getting developed, and
Right.
throughout that period.
Yeah, I think I was the second person that the power company ever hired that wasn't an engineer.
Okay. Wow. And throughout that time, were the deer just they were on there? Was there no hunting? I mean, what was the landscape kind of throughout that period of time?
At Clinton Lake? Or,
Yeah.
Well, they had public hunting on about 5,000 acres of ground, and then we had the Inner Peninsula because it was a cooling lake. It's a U-shaped lake, and so we had what we called the Inner Peninsula, which has water on like 3 sides of it, and that was not open to any hunting. It had one little 5-acre piece in the middle of it, but it was private. But other than that, that was not open to any hunting for like 15 years. So, and that's why everything got out of control out there. So.
Yeah, I want to talk about that. So the population was just getting rampant, but I mean.
Yeah, there was, in that 1,000 acres, basically, there was probably, I don't know, maybe 500-600 acres of ag fields, and then you have the fringe timber around the lake. And when I first started checking it out and figuring out what was going on there, we had, in August, you had a 100-acre bean field, and all the beans were like 3 inches tall, and everything out there was being eaten. I mean, that population was ridiculous. So,
what did the timber look like? Did it just
it's just hardwood timber around the edges and the lake being like it was. You had a lot of coves, and the beauty about hunting a place like that was at the end of every cove is a bottleneck, and so that helps when you're hunting. But just a lot of fringe timber around the lake.
Yeah. Was the habitat, or was there probably no habitat if there's that many deer and it was eating all the soybeans? I mean, it was just completely a overbrowsed timber.
Yeah, it was a browse line everywhere. And then all the beans and corn were being hammered like crazy. It even got to the point I found elm trees that deer were stripping the bark off of elm trees and eating it.
Because
they
they're
grab it at the bottom, pull on it, and strip the bark off and eat it.
Have you ever come across anything close to the severity of that?
No.
So the deer density was one of the thickest places you've ever seen or even heard about.
Yeah, basically. And then the year before I started the deer herd reduction program, I did a helicopter count in February with snow on the ground, and we counted 440 deer per square mile. So
Did you have a clicker in the
was just
helicopter?
Crazy, yeah. it was crazy, yeah. Yeah, that's about the way you did it back then. Yeah, you could do it probably a lot more accurately now because you have drones. But
yeah. Oh my gosh. So because you were tasked with handling that issue, is that right? I mean,
Yes.
How did that happen? Did they say, "Hey, Ron, we have to figure something out"?
we started talking about what the problem was and so forth, and then with my background in bow hunting forever, I just decided, okay, I'm going to try to solve this problem using bow hunting. And at that point, you really that hadn't been done before using bow hunting on a big herd reduction program like that. And I just and oddly enough, what I did was I had another guy that helped me with a project that I work with, and I looked at him and said, okay, we have both hunted on special hunts that DNR had on this type of situation, and they never worked. So whatever they did, we're doing just the opposite. That was my approach.
What was the status quo prior to what you implemented? Was it do gun hunts or?
Primarily gun hunts, but even on the bow hunting, the big mistake that DNR always made was they didn't have anybody running these hunts who was a serious bow hunter. And mistake they made was they approached it just like you would on a gun hunt. So their idea was, we're going to kill more deer because we're going to put more people out there. And it ended up being just the opposite, basically. So
interesting. So basically, you're tasked and you have a colleague helping you develop this from the perspective of a diehard deer hunter. Was there any pushback where they're like, okay, Ron, you're selfishly trying to make this great for big bucks, not herd reduction?
The biggest pushback I had was from DNR.
Really?
And at that time, their wildlife biologists didn't even know there was a problem there. And then they had starting out, well, the whole Winter Peninsula, when I first started the project, the whole Winter Peninsula was in the DNR lease for the public ground all over the place there. After fighting with them for 2 years, because every time I want to do something, they would fight me on it. And after 2 years, I actually went to Illinois Power, and we took that whole Winter Peninsula out of their lease. So that I could do what I wanted to.
Yeah, that's cool. They allowed you to do that.
Yeah,
and they believed in you, that they trusted you.
Yeah.
And so, what was the process like when you fly the helicopter? There's 200, 300 extra deer per square mile that there should be. Did you have to build out like a scientific method, or like what was, from the biology standpoint, what did that look like? One of the most overlooked pieces of gear when it comes to whitetail hunting is your glass, and that's why I trust Hawk Optics. I've used all sorts of different binoculars over the years, and I truly believe that Hawk dollar for dollar is one of the best options. There's premium glass, a lifetime no-fault warranty, and the Frontier series has been great. I would put it up against any of the glass I've used in the past, and even some more expensive pieces of glass. So if you're ready to upgrade your glass, get a new pair of binoculars, use code WHTL15, or check them out in a retail store and give them a shot. Hawk Optics, vision accomplished.
Well, I basically just, once I had a number to work with there, then I sat down and said, okay, here's what we're going to try to do and to reach our goal, which was, on that particular area, you could have 100, 150 deer per square mile, and it wasn't a problem because you had all the food and everything. And so that was kind of my long-term goal, was to get it down to that point. And so it was just a matter of sitting down and trying to design a program that would do that. And a little side note on that, you talked about Gordon Whittington. I knew him, and I met him one time down in Marion, Illinois, at a little deer gathering, and James Kroll was with him, and who's ultimate
Dr.
deer researcher, yeah. And so I sat down with Kroll, and I said, okay, here's the deal. We got fisheries biologists getting ready to do deer management, and his response was, and he was teaching people at that time deer management and that kind of thing. His response was, I think that's great. He said, we have way too many educated deer biologists. So,
so I mean, really, I'm guessing what he meant by that is a fresh approach.
Right. Yeah. Thinking
outside the box.
Term outside the box. Yeah. Thinking something new and different, and especially using bow hunting, because it really had not been proven you could do that using bow hunting at that point in time. So, and one of the major things I did there was, because we had really nice bucks on that property, that was the carrot, and that was the first place that I know of anyway where I set it up where you had to kill a doe before you could kill a buck. And and you had a week to hunt. If you got drawn, anybody could hunt from all over the United States if they got drawn in. And if you got a week to hunt, but you had to kill a doe, and you had to chuck that doe in before you could kill a buck.
When it was grossly overpopulated with deer, was there still big bucks, or?
There was. Surprisingly, there were. And at that point in time, too, I had been working with DNR because it was part of my job with the power company. And I actually got DNR to give me free doe tags. And I handed them out like candy, and I found out you just hand somebody a tag, they're going to shoot a doe, you know. And but one of the biggest things I ran into the first couple of years was, started out you had to shoot an antlerless deer. Okay, after 2 years, and I started running the data, 70% of the antlerless deer were the dumbest deer in the woods being killed. That's the button bucks. And so I changed it at that point and said, okay, we're done with that. Has to be a doe.
Wow. What year was hunting officially, when you started handing out the doe tags? What year was that? Do you remember?
1991 was when we started it. Yeah.
So 1991 was when that started.
Right.
And at that time, basically 450 deer roughly per square mile. Still some big bucks, but I want to really understand what it was like for when you implemented. When did you implement, okay, you can shoot a doe and then you can shoot a buck? What year was that?
That was as soon as the hunt started.
Okay, so that was, okay,
Yep.
okay, all right,
Yep.
I see. So 1991, that's when
and
that
then,
started.
And then I encourage you to shoot all the does. We'll give you free tags, shoot all the does you want. And then I tried to educate the hunters at that point in time, saying I would prefer you don't shoot a buck unless it's going to make Pope and Young. And that's an educational process, because I put up bulletin boards with pictures of deer and said, okay, this is how big this one is and so forth, just to try and educate people. And it took 2 or 3 years, but it finally started kicking in. And over the period of the whole hunt, 75% of the bucks killed on that hunt made Pope and Young.
That's got to be one of the most successful, management practices documented for whitetails.
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, and even after that, after I did the presentation on the whole thing at the Southeast Deer Study Group meeting, James Kroll and everybody was there for that, And shortly after that was when Pope and Young came out with their first edition of whitetail only book.
Mm-hmm.
And Kroll wrote the preface for that, and in that he cited the Clinton Lake hunt and everything. So he was very impressed with it. So
wow, that's amazing. And how long was it like the best kept secret? 1991, where people hear, oh, man, you just got to shoot a doe, and
right.
There's a lot of big deer, and you got a really good chance to shoot a pope. Because at that time, we've all been desensitized to big deer, and in that period of the 90s, I have to imagine that it was like, I don't even know a good metaphor or symbol, but it was incredible.
We were publicizing the hunt, but it took. There were some people who didn't hear about the hunt for the first 2 or 3 years of the hunt. So
How many more applicants did you have as it got more popular? Was there a point where
it kept increasing every year? Yeah, and then by then some of the bigger bucks had been killed on the hunt, and that kind of thing. The publicity got out on that. So,
what was your thought process on encouraging hunters to try to target a Pope and Young caliber deer? Was it an age structure approach or something differently?
I always kind of went with a pretty simplistic thing. It wasn't number of points or anything like that. I just told everybody, look at the deer. If the rack is equal to or outside the ears, then it's probably going to make Pope and Young.
Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of where we went with things. And then I would put up pictures and put the score on there as what it was and that kind of thing.
Someone, a state biologist or someone from any Department of Natural Resources, what would you tell them if they didn't listen to that? Because you're one guy. Obviously, I'm sure there was people helping you, but it's just a marvel. It's a modern whitetail marvel what you were able to do.
Well, they, the DNR. The biggest problem the DNR has is they have to play politics, and a lot of times the actual management just comes down to what a certain politician wants to do, and so that they're limited, and I understand that. But yeah, my problem I had initially with DNR was they didn't have anybody who understood what I was trying to do, and so I would.
And you were trying to reduce the herd, which is typically what a goal is,
right? And
also have an opportunity for high quality hunts,
right? And I did that by, handing out all the doe tags and that type of thing, but I also did it by saying, okay, instead of having a whole bunch of people hunting, I reduced the number of hunters, and I started out with like 35 hunters on 1,000 acres every week, and we wouldn't start to hunt until like the third week of October. And then after a couple of years, I reduced it to 30, and then maybe eventually down to like 20 people. And you end up killing more deer with fewer bow hunters in the woods. So that's just the way it works.
Why do you think that is? Just directly related to pressure and the amount of bodies in there, and things getting fooled
definitely
up?
Pressure, yeah. In fact, the first couple of years when we had 35 guys hunting every week, it was funny because after a while they get all the crops picked, and you look out there and all the whole bunch of deer would be standing in the middle of the field, and they wouldn't even go in the woods because they've been pushed around too much.
So they're just bedding out in the middle of the field and hanging out all day.
Right. Yep. So it was just a matter of balancing that. But I think the bottom line that DNR didn't understand was you kill more deer with fewer people when you're bow hunting.
Mm-hmm. I want to obviously relay this to just the state of Illinois now with that in mind. Would you say that we're overpopulated as it is today? And I know it varies throughout region. The regions from Illinois is a very long state.
Right.
It's very long. Right. But just for your neck of the woods, like, what do you feel that we're near a healthy population as a general rule of thumb, or 20% overpopulated?
Yeah, I think it's not drastically overpopulated, but there are a lot of areas that are overpopulated, and unfortunately, and I relate that back in Illinois to outfitting, because majority of the people are coming to Illinois with an outfitter are coming to kill a buck, and they don't shoot does. And some outfitters try to get them to shoot does, but I'm not sure how successful that is, but I think there are certain places where, like you said, maybe 20% or so overpopulated. But one of the things that DNR did to try and further reduce the population that way is having the late doe hunts in Illinois in certain counties where they think it's overpopulated. So, but their idea of overpopulated mine is not necessarily the same thing. They're talking, 25 to 50 deer per square mile, and I think a lot of areas can carry more deer than that and not really be terribly overpopulated.
Relating back to the crop damage, on once you've got the numbers where they needed to be, Did that take care of the majority of the crop damage on those fields?
It definitely reduced it a lot. And also what I did out there was I put up what I call an exclusion cage just to check the habitat, and that way you can compare the vegetation inside it versus outside of it, just in native vegetation. And I had a graduate student from ISU doing that, and you could see a very significant difference of the vegetation inside versus what was being devoured by all the deer outside of it. So,
how many sheds did you find on this?
A lot.
I was going to say that. When there was that many deer, you had to it was probably picking up Easter eggs.
There were a lot of sheds, and this was before a lot of people were even looking for sheds.
Yeah.
So yeah, we found a lot of sheds, typically speaking, on that place. So
I can only imagine. Is there anything you would have done differently? I mean, I know you were actually very proactive of making different changes, as you identified, okay, we need less hunters. Was there anything that, if you could do it all over again, that you would have done right from the start?
Not other than taking the land out of DNR's hands, because like I said, I had at that time I had to have a meeting every year with them, telling them what I wanted to do for the following year, and it was always a very long and
Did they ever give you credit?
Have arguments for that.
Did they ever say, Ron, you did a good job?
The director did. And I knew the director because I had worked with him because of my job with Illinois Power. I knew him and his top people, and he was a bow hunter, and he understood what was going on, but the people below him didn't. He was happy.
What was their gripes? The other people's gripes of what you were doing out there?
They were not bow hunters. They didn't know how to do anything, and they did not believe it would work at all. One of their chief district wildlife biologists told me, as far as he was concerned, the deer were rats with antlers. So that tells you anything.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so, there's a picture behind you over your shoulder here, and I want to hear the story of that. And it's actually a very iconic deer. And for anyone that has been to a Whitetails Unlimited banquet, which one of the things I researched, you were actually part of the Whitetails Unlimited Hall of Fame, by the way.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you are.
I didn't know that.
I was Googling your name and you came up. But anyways, Larry Zock, a very well-known artist, has a picture of old rivals.
Right.
And, you have a picture there of, the documentation of this deer going from 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 until he was eventually killed. And what is the story of that deer?
That buck showed up on the special hunt when he was 2.5. At 2.5, he was close to making Pope and Young as a non-typical, and at 3.5, 4.5, he was Boone and Crockett, and he just kept getting bigger. But he was extremely smart deer, and everybody was trying, obviously, to kill him on the special hunt. But that buck was so smart, he had like 4 or 5 small refuge areas, 5, 10, 15, 20 acre refuge areas. And as soon as people would start scouting, he would go nocturnal and he would not move in the daylight. The only time he would move in the daylight was if he was following a doe for like a week out of the whole year, that kind of thing. And yeah, he was extremely smart. I hunted that deer myself on the special hunt for 2 years, refusing to shoot anything else, and I never saw him in the daylight.
Wow.
He was that smart. And
because obviously you had a pulse on that unit. Was there people that had the one he got away stories like, oh, I saw him and he was 50 yards away, or was he just pretty much a ghost?
He was pretty much a ghost. One time he almost got killed by a hunter on the special hunt, which I'll not say who it is, but anyway, he almost got killed. The guy shot him high. He was on a steep angle and he shot him high, and I think hit the off side of the spine and the shoulder. And the buck was seen walking around. Well, about 2 or 3 weeks later, the buck was seen. He dropped his antlers. Mm-hmm. He was hurt that bad that he dropped his antlers. And then,
how old was he when he got hit?
That was probably when he was probably 5.5.
Okay.
And he dropped his antlers, and then he was seen in January, just barely alive. And then the following year, he had the biggest rack he ever had.
That seems not how it's supposed to go.
I know, but he was so stinking smart. It was ridiculous. And the fact that I had a permit to do spotlight counts, I had a real good idea where he was at most of the time, mm-hmm. in the dark anyway. And one time there, a friend of mine who's a measurer, he Boone and Crockett measurer, I told him about the buck, and I told him I'd show him to him if you don't do a spotlight count with me. And he said, yeah, you're just going to show me a Boone and Crockett deer. And we drove around, and I messed with him for a little while, and we drove around, and then finally I drove down a dirt road, shut off the lights, turned the truck off, put the spotlight out the window, and the deer was standing there 20 yards away. So, and one time Larry Zock got drawn for the hunt, and he was hunting, and I took him out in the dark doing a spotlight count and showed him the buck in the dark. And then I don't know if you want to talk about this now, but the other thing that happened there on spotlight count, I was doing a spotlight count. I believe it was like the 7th of November or something like that. And I had my wife and a friend of mine with me, and we were driving around and came around a pick cornfield, and that buck and another buck were getting ready to fight. And a friend of mine, she had a VHS camera, the great big cameras they used to have, and it was the first time we'd ever done anything with a camera. Nobody knew what we were doing at all. And it was cold, and it was blowing wind 30 miles an hour. I put them in the back of the truck, and I pulled up to where those bucks were fighting, and put the spotlight out the window and kept a spotlight on it. And we videotaped them for like 5 minutes trying to kill each other. And finally, the other buck, which was younger and whatever, he finally wore that older buck down and ran him off, and almost ran right toward the truck with him poking him in the hind end. So,
oh my gosh!
But it was a heck of a deal. They were on the ground more than once trying to kill each other. So,
how big was the other one?
I'm saying probably 160, something like that.
Yeah.
But it was just younger and stronger, and that it was it was a deadly fight. They were trying to do each other in.
A true, and that was November 7th.
Yeah, November 7th, I think it was.
Yeah. A date that sticks out to a lot of people, obviously.
Right.
And so do you think that the history of a deer like this do you think it's going to be duplicated? Because to have that many years of history of a wild free-range deer where he can get shot any day during the season.
Yeah, I don't see that happening again. One of the things that happened there was a local farm couple who lived in Clinton, and they would drive out there and with binoculars looking for that buck. They would watch that buck, and as soon as they saw him without his antlers, they would hit the woods and try to find his sheds. And like I said, that one picture I did for the article for North American Whitetail, they had all those sheds mounted that they found. And so I had one picture, and it's got over 1,200 inches of antler from one deer and it's a wild animal. So that'll probably never happen again. It's
an anomaly. And it's in such a unique looking deer too, with just such a wide frame. And
he had a 36-inch outside spread.
It's unreal. if someone said, I saw a deer, he was, so how much was his inside spread? Do you remember? Like it had to be 30 something still.
Yeah, it was at low 30s. But yeah, he was just crazy. They were super wide. Then he had a lot of drop tines, 4 or 5 drop tines, and the drop tines would change back and forth from one side to the other from year to year.
When the couple that followed the deer so closely, were they not deer hunters? Were they just infatuated with the deer?
No, they had some property over on the other side of the lake where they probably did some gun hunting, but they weren't serious deer hunters. No.
They just loved following the deer.
No, and then their son was a photographer, and he ended up taking one picture I have of the deer alive in a bean field. But
when word got out, I mean, obviously, I'm guessing Larry applied because he knew that deer was on that. Like, was there these guys that were like ginormous? They wanted a chance to hunt it. Truly a once in a lifetime or once in many lifetime type caliber deer. Yeah,
for sure. And then when Larry was there, I showed him the deer, and I told him then, you need to do some kind of a print on this deer, an art print on this deer. And his response was, well, it's so big, it's going to be hard to make it look realistic or whatever. And then the next thing I know, he comes up with this idea that how to make it look bigger is put it in the background further and so forth. But he used the idea of the 2 bucks fighting that I got video of, and that's where he came up with the old rivals idea. And there's all kinds of different rivals in there, Pepsi and Coke and Pioneer and DeKalb and all kinds of different rivals in there, and a Farmall and a John Deere tractor, and it sold out immediately when he did that print.
It's an extremely iconic print. I mean, I think we'll put a picture of it, and most people will say, oh, yeah, I recognize that, because I've seen it before. And then to piece it all together and then talk to the guy that followed the deer along, it's crazy.
It was really cool, him doing that print on that like that, because, I mean, at the time when we were doing all this stuff, you don't think of things like that. But I did try and convince him to do a print on it after he saw it. And,
How did you meet Larry?
He was introduced to me by a mutual friend, and then, like I said, I did stuff in Decatur for Whitetails Unlimited. And one time there, at one of the banquets we had there, I contacted Larry, and he flew from Iowa with a whole bunch of prints and came to that banquet and so forth. And that was really a nice banquet, and everybody really loved his prints, and it just worked out real well. And then through him, I got introduced to another person who ended up getting drawn from the hunt from Iowa, and it was a mutual friend of Larry's, and he's this other person, Ed McDaniel. He's the one that invited me to come and hunt in Iowa at that time. So.
And then you started hunting in Iowa, and well, let me back up for 1 second. It's actually very funny. There was a period of time where people would leave Iowa to come to Illinois.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
Now
that's true.
Now I don't think that happens as often.
No. But no, it was one of the things that I like to mention about this whole hunt and the project and management project and so forth is one of the best things that came out of this is the number of good hunters and the number of people that I met, hunters that I met on this project from all over the United States. I mean, several of them ended up being good friends and, had a lot of influence on my life over the years and things like that. But it was just, there's so many good people showed up because of this thing. And one of them, like you said, was my friend from Maryland there who called me at just out of the blue. And this was before cell phones too, you got to remember. But when I was doing that presentation or getting ready to, he called me up and started quizzing me on it and that kind of thing. And then I met him there, and we've been friends for 30 years or more now. So.
That is amazing. It's crazy. I've said before, it's like the whitetail deer usually motivates people to work really hard to have an opportunity to hunt good whitetails, and also just the friendships and connections that come from whitetails is, it's really amazing that a deer with antlers on top of their head can do all that for someone's life.
One of the things, one of the guys I met on as a result of all this too was a guy from Colorado that ended up being a friend from Colorado, and he was a cattle rancher. But because of some of the people I met on this hunt, I actually in 1995 I ended up going and spending 3 weeks bow hunting in South Africa. So, so you never know. It's you get a lot of acquaintances and friendships out of that type of thing. So
when did you first hunt Iowa? What year was that? Do you remember?
Wow, probably 92, 93, something like that.
Okay, so 92, 93, and then what was it like then in comparison to today?
There again, you didn't, at that time, there weren't that many bow hunters.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was fun hunting because you knew there were a pretty good number of really good bucks in any place you're going to hunt, basically in Iowa. Yeah, it was just overall a lot of fun hunting then, and nobody really thought too much about it at that point in time,
Yeah. And there was, we were talking about it before, but you had, you guys were videoing, and tell us about all the deer in one frame when you were videoing.
The person who invited me to hunt his property, it borders a place over there that's a private hunting club. And one time, Larry Zock and I were sitting on the fence line, and Larry was a member of this club at that time. But we were sitting on the fence line with video cameras, and it was in August when all the bucks are coming out in the bean fields every night. And we were videotaping bucks, and I had one frame that I captured on that, and there were 5 Boone and Crockett bucks in one frame. And one of them was a giant non-typical that Larry actually ended up killing.
That was the state record at the time.
That season, yeah. But it was just outrageous to look out there and see that many big bucks in one area hanging out together.
Yeah, it's bizarre. It's truly bizarre. That's it's hard to believe. So you've written articles for a variety of different publications over the years. Is there anything that a story or anything that really sticks out to you from being so in tune with the world of whitetails and also writing in publications? And that now is the time when magazines were like at its heyday too.
Right.
So it was a big deal.
Right. Well, one of the articles that I did for Deer and Deer Hunting, it's a kind of article where it's going to be the same every year once you publish it, and they have republished it several times. Mm-hmm. And what I did was I took 35,000 Pope and Young entries, and the whole focus of the article was what day did they hit the ground. Forget everything else, just what day did they hit the ground. I started out in September, and then October, and November, and then what was the best week of each month, and so forth. And then finally, the most ridiculous question is what one day had more deer killed than any other day in fall hunting season. That was November 11th.
November 11th.
Veterans Day.
Veterans Day.
And I had always said in my own mind anyway, if you only got 1 week to take off of work to hunt, you better be hunting Veterans Day week.
So the we should look up to see when Veterans Day is this year real quick, just for a guy that hasn't put in their vacation time for this year, and they're going to listen to you, Ron. So Veterans Day is obviously it's on a Tuesday. Yep. So Sunday, November 9th to November 15th, is that the week you would take?
Yeah. And what I did on that article, I started out all the numbers and crunching the numbers, and in my mind, what typically happens, and it changes a little bit from year to year, but typically you're going to get the bucks to start locking up with does around the 2nd, 3rd, 4th of November, and then somewhere around the 8th or so of November, then they're going to start breaking loose from that first doe, and that's when most of them get killed.
So I'm the weatherman, and I'm going to predict the weather. Let's say that week it's highs of 65 and lows of 45 for that whole week. Do you still feel just as good about it?
That's good weather. Yeah. the bad part is when it's like 85 at daytime. But I mean, the rut's going to take place no matter what. But you may not see it as much. But no, that whole week traditionally is the best week as far as I'm concerned.
What's your personal? Because you've killed some big deer too, by the way. But I don't. That's besides the point. But for that period of time, what is your go-to strategy? Like, what does the morning hunting look like? Do you hunt all day? Like, what does that look like for you?
Typically speaking, I don't really worry about it too much till about the 25th of October. Uh-huh. If I'm going to hunt earlier than that, I'll hunt just afternoons. Mm-hmm. But then starting around the 25th of October, you can hunt morning or afternoon. And then from Halloween until probably about the 15th of November, I'm going to be hunting hard and all day and whatever, as much as I can.
As much as you can.
Yeah.
Are you, is there, just to get a little bit more linear, is it like, do you try to focus on being downwind of doe bedding or like a bedding area, or sit a terrain feature where deer are bottlenecked to go through? I mean, is there one or two things that you just really enjoy, or is it just, hey, throw a dart and you got a chance?
Well, as everybody knows, you can't fool a whitetail's nose, so that's the biggest concern, is trying to set up stands so that, you can be hunting downwind of where you expect them to come through at least. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times what I'll do is I'll put two stands on the same trail, one for each wind, one for east wind, one for west wind, kind of thing, that type of thing. And then the place I'm hunting now has 4 or 5 wooded draws that deer love to bed in, and I stay away from those because, number one, you can't hunt down in there anyway because the wind swirls. Mm-hmm. But number two, they feel safe that way, and I just hunt the fringe edges and try not to disturb them. I think one of the main things that everybody needs to really consider is keep it to a minimum of hunting pressure, because like I said, deer will get so educated that they will go nocturnal, and then you won't see them in the daylight. Mm-hmm. As I think I mentioned to you before, I've been riding for North American for years, and mostly on the biggest bucks killed every year in Illinois. And there's two things that I always hear on the biggest bucks killed. Number one, it came from some kind of refuge where it had a chance to get an extra year or two older. And number two, that's the first time I hunted that stand that year. Mm-hmm. And you can hunt a stand and be gone 10 hours later. I mean, a deer walk by and know you're there. I mean, but if they've never smelled you in that stand, the first time you hunted is your best chance to kill a big buck there.
Yeah, well, there's a deer I specifically remember. It was one of the bigger deer I've ever had a chance to hunt, and I did a hanging hunt. It was November 9th. It was just a very mediocre hunt, and then I put a camera nearby where I hung that stand, and then this was still one of those SD cards, and I pulled the card 2 weeks later, and I put it in there, and first picture is me hanging the camera, and then me getting down to the stand that night or evening, and then about, I don't know, it was probably 11 o'clock at night, midnight, that deer I was in there after, looking straight up and down where I just hunted. And that's a perfect example.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize that they will come by hours later and know you've been there.
Yeah, there's scent and disturbance.
Yeah. But if they've never hunted, if they've never walked by that stand and smelled anybody, they don't pay attention to it at all. So
yeah, that's fascinating. Do you you've been scoring deer for how long have you been scoring deer with Pope and Young?
Probably 30 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
What trends have you noticed are you seeing more entries, less entries? Are you seeing anything different throughout that time frame?
I've measured, Pope and Young, Boone and Crockett, but way back when, going to the Illinois Deer Classic and measuring deer there, years and years ago, you would get a lot of deer brought in that were 125, 135, something like that. Mm-hmm. Now you go to the Deer Classics and nobody brings those deer in anymore. They bring in, most of the deer are going to be 150 or better, that kind of thing.
Yeah. with scoring at the Illinois Deer Classic and you know, like during the heyday, that used to be a really big event. It seems to be getting a little bit more traction again. But have you noticed anything like, man, this deer, or like the frames or the genetics, do they feel like they're the same? Because this is something that always cracks me up. You know, and this is this armchair discussion where, you know, maybe someone's hunted the same area for 20 years. They used to have bigger deer, and now they're saying there isn't, and the genetics just changed. And it's like, no, it's the age structure is what changed.
Right.
So that's the root of my question.
Yeah, I agree completely. Genetics have not changed, and they're still really, really good in Illinois, maybe better than in most states. And but yeah, genetics haven't changed, but the number of people hunting and the proficiency of the weapons used, that's the difference, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You know, as I said, I might have mentioned this before, but in the late 90s, at the Deer Classic in Bloomington, in 3 days we had 600 deer heads brought in. We had like 30 people measuring, and 10% of those heads netted Boone and Crockett, not gross, netted Boone and Crockett.
So there were 60 Boone and Crockett entries over a 3-day period.
Yeah, and that's unheard of. No state that I know of has ever put up those kind of numbers.
And that was obviously the peak.
Yeah, that was the peak, and then due mainly, in my mind, to two things: outfitting and the fact that DNR did not limit the number of non-resident tags. Illinois just got overwhelmed, and a lot of people coming into Illinois started shooting 2- and 3-year-old bucks. So.
Yeah, it's almost like there was a fork in the road, and I will remain straight on that road, and Illinois took a different path. Right.
Well, years ago, before I worked for DNR, somebody asked me, if we make you the head deer biologist, what are you going to do? And I said, well, first of all, I'm going to be gone for a couple of weeks. I'm going to Iowa, and when I get back, we're going to do everything just like I was doing it. So.
Oh my gosh. Would you have taken that job if you were offered it?
I don't know. It's a tough job.
That is a tough job. That's a very tough job.
But Iowa has its problems just like any other state, as far as having to put up with the politicians and the farmers and insurance companies and all that stuff. But they've stuck to their guns, and the main thing is by limiting the number of non-resident tags.
Yeah.
Then
well, we were just talking before. You're waiting in line, and everyone waits in line, right?
Yeah, and that way you have a lot of bucks that get a chance to get to 4 or 5, 6 years old.
The Whitetail Podcast is brought to you by Moultrie. One of the first cameras I ever bought was a Moultrie, and they've come a long way. Whether after your first deer ever or this is your 20th year of hunting, Moultrie has you covered. Their cellular trail cameras have no SD card, very easy to use and set up right out of the box. I love to pair the Power Mag with a Pro Series camera. The Moultrie cameras are affordable, effective, and reliable with US-based customer service, 2-year warranty, and just a great camera. So the next time you're in the store and you're trying to decide what camera to buy, I encourage you to try a Moultrie if you want to support the podcast.
Yeah, that's fascinating. What's something, you've seen truly the full progression of the world of whitetails for the most part. Like, you started hunting with a recurve when there was very little deer. You saw it peak in the 90s, and it's hard to believe it's already 2025. But what is something that you would tell someone that's maybe just hunting for the first time this year, and so they're tapping into your 50 years of experience, and they want to get off on the right foot?
I just tell them, go out, have a good time, enjoy it, and shoot the first buck you see, and start working your way up. A lot of people, you shoot one buck, and then maybe next year you try to shoot one a little bigger. I mean, it's a progress you got to go through. You can't, you're not going to become a big buck hunter overnight. And as we know, unfortunately, the odds of somebody killing a really big buck are very, very slim. So the main thing is just have a good time and enjoy it. When I bought a new piece of property last year, and when I bought it, I loved the property, and I looked at my hunting partner and said, you know what? I'm going to go out there and just sit in my stand and enjoy this place. I don't really care if I kill deer or not. I'm just going to have a good time.
Was there any moments in your own personal, hunting endeavors where something clicked or made a lot of sense? Like, gosh dang, I wish I would have knew this 10 years ago or 5 years ago or 20 years ago. Is there anything that sticks out to you?
If it's anything, like I said, it's the response the deer have to hunting pressure. It's just something you don't really think a lot about, because you think, okay, I got this place to hunt, and I've got this stand, and I'm going to hunt it, and the weather's good, I'm going to go out and hunt it or whatever. But minimal hunting pressure really changes how much time a big buck will spend walking around in the daylight.
So, all right, I'm going to loop it back to the 25th to November 15th. You said you're going to, excuse me, you're going to try to hunt as much as possible. Can you throw that out of the window throughout that period, or are you still like bouncing around and have multiple spots?
One of the advantages that we have now that we didn't used to have are trail cameras. And what I try to do is I really monitor those trail cameras and not go into if I find a big buck, I'm not going to just rush out and hunt immediately. I'm going to look at it, try to figure out his movement patterns and that kind of thing using the trail cameras. And you can do that in a non-invasive way.
Yeah.
And that way you have a pretty good chance of killing him the first time you're there.
Yeah. With the biggest deer you've shot, does that fall underneath those rules first time? I know the one did. For the spot, not necessarily hunting the deer for the first time, but the spot.
Right. Yeah. That one I killed. I had hunted the property before and killed a doe there, but I hadn't hunted it for 2 years. And so the first time I was in that, I killed that buck. And so it was 1997. It was the biggest non-typical kill in Illinois with a bow. So, but and I'll take luck any time. So if I'd been there half an hour later, I would have missed him. That kind of thing. So.
Let me ask you this. So let's say you did get the job for being the head of the deer in Illinois with the DNR. Hey Ron, you have the credentials. We read and saw what you did in the 90s on the piece that you managed for the power plant. What are you going to do to make Illinois as good as it once was? Let's say in the late 90s when 10% of them netted Boone and Crockett. What's your 90-day plan or 120-day plan or whatever they say?
I'm not sure it would ever be possible to get it back as good as it was in the late 90s. And a lot of that is just difference in
proficiency of hunters.
And proficiency of hunters, equipment, that type of thing. But if I could get anybody to do anything in DNR right now that I think would get us headed in that direction, it would be go to a 1 buck limit in Illinois. 1 buck limit has a lot of advantages. They did it in Indiana, Kentucky, different places, and it works great. If you can only kill 1 buck, a high percentage of your hunters are going to end up not killing a buck because they're holding out for a bigger buck.
Yeah.
But that also translates into 1.5, 2.5, 3.5, even 4.5-year-old bucks. They're not going to get shot. They're going to get a chance to keep moving up through that age structure in your population. But I think if you go to 1 buck limit in Illinois, I think in 5 years it would be probably not as good as it was in the 90s, but it would be a big increase.
One of the best in the country.
Yeah.
I mean,
but that'll never happen in Illinois unless you can. I hate to say it, unless you can find the right politician to push it, because that's what it would take. Getting somebody that's on the Sportsman's Caucus to convince DNR this is what we need to do.
Do you? I mean, I'm to be brutally honest. Like I'm 2 buck state. Like usually the first buck, I'm usually very excited that I shot it. But if it was like, man, you could only shoot one.
Yeah.
A lot of times, honestly, I would eat a tag a lot more years.
Well, I think that would happen a lot. People would eat the tag, but the other advantage would be if you're not shooting a buck or whatever, a lot of people still want to kill a deer.
Yeah.
Well, they're going to actually shoot more does because of that.
What if okay, let's do all right, we're going to meet in the middle here, Ron. It's going to be you get 1 buck tag and 1 doe tag when you buy your combo archery tags. And if you shoot your doe, check it in, we'll give you a 2nd buck tag. Would you still feel that would be a net positive?
In some places, some counties where you have a overpopulation, maybe have it so you have to shoot a doe, and then maybe have it so you have right now, so you would have to shoot another doe before you can get your 2nd buck tag. I mean, a lot of different possibilities there, but the problem with when you go to having to shoot a doe before a buck, the problem is logistics and the fact that it's pretty labor intensive on monitoring it. And how do you check that out? And how do you prove that you killed your doe and that kind of thing?
Yeah, they just call it in and say I shot one. Yeah.
It'd be a lot easier now because you have your cell phone, you have electronics, you have things you can
put a timestamp, take a picture.
Right, take a picture of it. So
no, that.
When we did it before, we had a check station on site, and you had to bring the doe into that check station to check it in. But it was pretty labor intensive. I mean, I had people that helped with the check station and that kind of thing. But
What if? Could you imagine if you could pick one county in the state of Illinois to only go to bow only? Which county would you pick? And I'll relate this back to a conversation with Bill Winke. He said Calhoun County needs to be a bow only county because it's kind of a peninsula that goes down. And he's like, that'd be a perfect one for that candidate. Has that ever crossed your mind?
Not really.
Because West Virginia has the bow-only counties, and there's really big deer there.
Oh, okay.
And so that's kind of the root of the question of, it would be interesting.
The way things are these days with the non-resident hunting and the outfitting and that type of thing, the big bucks that are being killed in Illinois, it's kind of shifted. It used to be the Golden Triangle, Pike, Adams, and Brown. It's shifted north. So north central, anywhere in north central Illinois would be really good. There's a few other counties like Clark County down right across from Terre Haute, Indiana. That's a really good county. But I could see where that would be a really nice thing to have, a county where it's bow hunting only. But there again, I doubt that it would ever happen, just because DNR looks at it like, okay, we need to kill the most deer we can kill with gun hunting and so forth. So
it is concerning to think that if the goal is 25 to 50 deer per square mile, and a lot of parts of Illinois, there's really good habitat. I mean, there's some spots where sure that might make sense, but that's really not that many deer for a square mile.
No, that's not. They've been that way for years, thinking that would be the ideal population. But after what I did there at Clinton Lake, 100 150 deer per square mile, if you have all the food and everything they need, is really not that overpopulated. So
was there? I think when we were talking at one point where you got the deer number down, the deer per square mile where you wanted it, was there anything that you changed once you got to that amount?
At one point, we actually got the population down to the point where we were estimating it was like 2 does per buck. And at that point, I realized for that particular piece of ground, every piece is going to be different. But for that particular piece of ground, a lot of the big bucks, when the rut started leaving the area, and looking for does someplace else. And so we went back to more like 3 does per buck, and I think that was more of an ideal buck-doe ratio. But every piece of ground is different. But I think somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 does per buck would be a pretty good goal for most people. And what's happening now too is you're getting a lot more people have their own land, and they're managing their own land. And I said 30 years ago, I tell everybody, if you want to really manage the deer population the right way, do it yourself, keep DNR out of it. But they're doing that. A lot of people are very effectively doing that now, and they're setting their own rules. Like say, okay, whoever's hunting my land, you get 1 buck, whatever, that type of thing. And then, but you got to kill X number of does or whatever, And I think that's starting to show up in a positive way in certain parts of Illinois, anyway.
Yeah. Honestly, I haven't looked at the map of where you manage. I should have done that. But would the deer swim off the peninsula or swim across the lake, or anything any weird behaviors that you notice over the years?
Yeah, actually we had one of the biggest bucks we had on the hunt. It was a huge typical. He was like 200-inch typical. And that buck lived on the south side of the lake by the dam where it was a refuge and nobody could hunt there. And when the rut would kick in, that buck would swim the lake on the widest point in the lake, probably like a mile and a half wide. He would swim the lake, spend about 2 weeks hanging out on the inner peninsula during the rut, and then he would swim back across the lake and leave it again. And one time there, I decided to try and figure out how much movement we were getting, in that area. And I trapped and tagged about 35 or 40 deer. And I didn't have radio cars. I just used cattle tags or whatever. And what I found out was every deer that left the peninsula got killed by a bow, a gun, or a car. And I had one that I tagged on the inner peninsula, and it got killed over by Champaign, which is probably 50 miles away.
50?
Yeah.
So the deer. Oh my!
And at that time there was a guy, Chuck Nixon was his name. He worked for the History Survey. And he was doing tagging and radio collaring of big bucks over by Champaign at Allerton Park over there. And he got some really good data out of that. He had one deer that he tagged at Allerton Park that got killed down by Taylorville, which was 70, 80 miles away kind of thing. So, I mean, deer do a lot of moving sometimes, and especially during the rut, that. But I can't tell you how many times I've done articles on big bucks, and somebody after the buck's killed, somebody will come up and say, well, I got a picture of this buck 24 hours before you kill it, and he was 5 miles away or 10 miles away, whatever,
Yeah. Why, if put on your biology hat, why would that deer go 50 miles to Champaign when there's I'm sure there had to be so much habitat, so many other places that they could have called home, it just doesn't make any sense.
I don't know. We had one doe that we tagged and somewhere over by Champaign there, she would have her fawns like almost in the middle of the interstate there, where it was divided and there was some timber in between them, both lanes kind of thing. And she just lived there most of the time. So
that's bizarre. Yeah, it's so funny when you hear those stories where people, try to shoebox in deer behavior of like, nope, deer do this, deer do, and then there's always the outlier that just makes you scratch your head.
I say the deer haven't read the playbook, so
no, they don't play by our rules, do they?
Not at all. No matter how much the technology has changed or anything else, it's still a wild animal, and that deer doesn't know what it's going to do next, much less us trying to figure it out. So
that's truly fascinating. Is there a favorite story that you personally have from your hunting adventures that sticks out to you? I mean, I feel like you've lived a lifetime of many. Honestly, your stories here.
Probably my all-time most favorite hunt that I ever did was an elk hunt.
Okay.
Bow hunting. Mm-hmm. It was in a primitive area in Colorado, which means you had to backpack in or you had to use horses, and I didn't have horses. So anyway, we backpacked in 8 miles and set up a base camp in the valley by the water, and then we just take off and go hunting and bivouac for 2 or 3 days, and wherever you stopped, just lay down and go to sleep. And I killed, I slept there the night before about 11,000 feet right on the shale line, and almost got run off by a lightning storm. But anyway, slept there and got up the next morning, and I was standing in the middle of a bunch of spruce trees, and the last trail at the shale line was like 20 yards away. And I looked up, and a bull elk comes walking up and started chewing on the tree that I'm standing in the middle of. And I was hunting with a recurve, and I had one little opening, and he's on one side, and he comes around, and he hits that opening. I leaned out and shot, and when I actually shot, he was probably 6 feet away when I shot. And and then the hard part came, because then I had to bone it out, and then I had to pack meat out 8 miles. But that was probably one of my most memorable hunts, that's for sure.
Yeah. No, that's really amazing. I just want to. Is there anything else you wish that the younger generation understood about whitetail hunting that we didn't cover? Because I feel like there was some thoughts that you shared about, obviously have fun. The hunting is a progression. Try to get better, challenge yourself. But is there anything else that you wish more people understood or listened to?
I don't know. Like I said, it's just it's a progression, and I've got grandkids that have been, a couple of them that hunt with me, and they both killed their first deer when they were like 10 years old. Mm-hmm. But it's just watching them go through the process and trying to kill something a little bit bigger all the time and that kind of thing. But the main thing I keep telling them or anybody else is, you're out there to have a good time. Enjoy yourself, have a good time. The biggest problems that I've seen over the years with hunting deer comes from your own mind. It comes from you putting too much pressure on yourself, thinking, I got to do this and I got to kill this big buck or whatever. Just go out and have a good time. Mm-hmm. And the other thing is, you don't have to hit the woods looking like you just walked out Bass Pro or Cabela's and have every hunting tool in the universe. Mm-hmm. Keep it simple. Go out in the woods, have a good time, and just relax and enjoy it. That's what it's all about. So. Was
there ever a period of time or a specific deer that you caught that you fell into that trap with building up so much self-pressure?
Yeah, probably that Mascoutin.
But, understandably, to be fair.
I got pretty focused on that buck, and like I said, I hunted him for 2 years and never saw him in the daylight. But you knew he was there, and the pressure of, okay, what can I do different? Try to get to that buck, that kind of thing. But every hunter goes through a period of time where they put too much pressure on themselves, mm-hmm. and they kind of forget about, hey, I'm supposed to be having a good time out here,
Yeah. No, that's great. And then November 11th is your favorite day, and November 9th to the 15th, earmark that and plan to spend a lot of time in the woods. Yeah,
yep, for sure. Everybody, the rut changes a little bit every year.
Sure.
You see all the charts and everything else about when.
Do you believe in the moon?
My common response to all that is, how come all the fawns, 90% of the fawns are born in the same week in June every year? So all the breeding takes place at almost the same time every year. So,
right. Do you put any weight into the moon?
Not particularly.
Well, there's some, and I think what's more interesting from your perspective, there's people that are fishermen that swear by different moon phases. Right. What about for fishing? Do you believe in the moon?
I've never paid a lot of attention to the moon. Some people, there's been a lot of studies done when's a full moon in November compared to when the rut kicks in and things like that. But I've never put a lot of weight in. And the main thing on the moon when I'm hunting would be, if it's a full moon, then I'm probably going to spend more time hunting in the middle of the day because I think they'll be moving then versus morning or evening and that kind of thing. But other than that, I don't put a lot of weight in.
Okay. There's some people that swear by it. I fall into the same camp where I almost feel like I'm missing out because I don't pay attention to it, and then some people swear by it, and then it's like, it's one more thing to pay attention to.
But just remember that might be like a lot of things in our sport, and it's called marketing.
Yeah. How much has the industry changed from? How much do you think the industry has changed from when you wrote your first article and they got published in a magazine to September 5th, 2025? Like, how do you ever look and like shake your head at the space, or is it just like, oh, that's just it's just the progression of anything?
There again, I think I think a lot of the things that are pushed these days and so forth, a lot of it goes back to marketing. I mean, people are trying to sell something and so forth, and there again, just don't believe everything you hear and keep it basic as possible. So,
is there one hunting?
I mean, I do use some scents and that type of thing. Mostly I use some cover-up scent for my boots and that type of thing, but. But other than that, I don't get too carried away with it. And it's almost virtually impossible to fool a deer's nose. So, no matter what.
Is there one hunting gimmick that stuck out to you as almost comical? If you're willing to answer.
I don't know. There again, I'll just say don't believe everything you see on the hunting videos.
Okay.
Remember, there is such a thing as called editing.
That's too funny. Yeah, no, it's been great here, Ron. All right, I'm going to hit you with some rapid fire questions. What is your favorite bow you've ever hunted with?
A bow I hunted with that I killed my biggest buck with was, you probably remember the name, but Jennings.
Okay.
Made bows
way
back when.
Yeah.
And it was a Jennings bow that I used when I killed that big buck with. But I had a custom-made recurve that I really liked too, and that's what I killed that elk with that time. But I haven't been real picky on the type of bows I use, but
yeah,
anymore if it's a company that's still in business, it's probably a pretty good bow.
Right. Yeah. No, they've stood the test of time. Yeah. What's your favorite bow?
I killed most of my animals I ever killed. I probably killed with an old bear razorhead, and then last few years I tried some expandables and that type of thing, and they work pretty well. I mean, the last couple of years or so, I watch hunting videos too, and it seems to me like everybody using expandables when they shoot a deer, I don't care what poundage you're using, that arrow probably does not go all the way through that deer, and that kind of struck a chord with me. And last year I got a fixed blade broadhead I started using, and this thing is very, very heavy duty. It's kind of like the old bear razorhead, but it's on steroids,
Yeah.
But it's very heavy duty. The blades are not going to bend, not going to break or anything like that. And like I said, that buck I killed last year, he took a sharp left-hand turn and took a step forward, and the arrow actually entered in the hindquarter on one side, but the arrow went the full length of the deer, came out the front of the chest, and buried in the grass, and I never found the arrow. That's the kind of penetration I got with it.
That's amazing.
With a fixed blade head there. So yeah, it's called iron will.
I was gonna guess it was an iron will.
I'm using that with 125 grain iron will.
Yeah.
And that thing, I was very, very happy with the penetration on that. When I first got it, I thought I got a bag target.
Yeah.
Because okay, I'm going to shoot that target there just to make sure I'm close.
Yeah.
I shot that iron will broadhead at 20 yards, and it went all the way through the bag target and buried in the grass. And took me like 2 days to find the arrow. And I said, okay, that's good penetration there.
That's amazing. What's the furthest you ever shot a deer with a bow?
Probably 35 yards.
35.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I never did a lot of long range shooting. I was never the kind of shooter with a bow. I couldn't drive nails, but I
in the moment of truth, you put it where you
I
need
did
to.
pretty well. So yeah.
Yeah. What the first deer you ever shot? What do you remember most about it?
Actually, I was a doe, and I was on the ground. I was just doing a lot of still hunting. I didn't really know what I was doing, but I was walking through the woods as quietly as possible, and a doe just popped up and walked by at about 20 yards, and so that was the first one I shot with a bow. So
yeah, with a recurve.
No, actually, that was with a compound.
That one was with a compound.
Yeah.
Okay. What's the dream state that you have never hunted but want to? I mean, obviously Illinois and Iowa in the heyday is pretty tough to beat, but we'll even do a country, because I know there's whitetails in Mexico and Canada.
I've hunted a lot of different states for mule deer and elk and that type of thing, and whitetails obviously. But I wouldn't mind going to Wyoming. I've never been there, and I may try to go there in a year or two and go elk hunting there. But
that would be amazing.
But and the reason I'm considering it is it's a private ranch. They have big alfalfa fields, and I can no longer chase the elk up and down the mountains like I used to because I'm old.
Yep.
And so I want a ground blind or a tree stand on the edge of an alfalfa field and let the elk come to me. So
yeah,
that's my goal anyway. So
that's amazing. Morning or evening sits, which do you prefer?
Again, it depends totally on the time of year. Time of the season, I'll say.
It is November 11th.
November 11th, I will be there from before daylight, and as long as I can stand to sit in the tree stand. But yeah, it depends on. And I think one of the things that people very much overlook when they're deer hunting, starting the 1st of October, about every 10 days, everything that deer is doing changes because of crops getting picked, because of rut kicking in, everything like that. But it continually changes, and so you need to. You don't have to make big changes, but you need to make small adaptations in your hunting based upon the fact that every 10 days something different is happening.
Yeah, no, October is a major month of change because there's the first hard frost is going to come at some point in that month more than likely, and then that's a really good piece of advice.
Right, and then I try and like I said, not overhunt, but I try and keep a real close eye on the weather that time of year too. And first good cold front comes through, I'm going to be hunting right after that.
Yeah. Okay. Do you bring any snacks to the stand? If so, what's your favorite?
Probably cookies and Diet Coke.
What's one piece of gear that you cannot hunt without? And so take the bow out, take the release out, like all the obvious ones. But like, what's one thing that you don't feel right if you don't have it with you?
Rangefinder.
Okay.
And I use it. You get in the stand, and then I just use it. Here's a tree. Here's a tree. Here's a tree. Arrange them ahead of time, and that way, when the moment of truth comes, you remember how far away it is.
Yeah.
Because with a bow, particularly, you got to know that distance.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's extremely important. What's your favorite month to hunt in Illinois?
November.
Easy question.
You might have noticed on my truck, my license plate.
11.
11 and QDM. So that's November and QDM. So
You really live by the 11. That's fun. What was tougher, the spotlight surveys, writing articles with deadlines, or measuring giant non-typical bucks?
Probably writing article deadlines. It's all fun, so but I enjoy all of it. But yeah, sometimes you get under the gun and you got a deadline. You got to get something written. I don't know about you, but I got to be in the right mode to write, and right frame of mind, I'll say, to write. And if I can get in that mode, typically speaking, I can sit down and crank out an article in about an hour and a half, and it's pretty much done the first time, kind of thing. So but you got to be in the right frame of mind to do that. Yeah,
no, it's a creative process for sure. What if you could relive one hunt, not the elk hunt, but if you could relive one hunt, which one would it be?
Probably the one I killed my biggest buck on.
Yeah.
And again, I was in the stand 5 minutes, so I'll take luck anytime. But that whole process of it, I think the reason I was able to kill that deer was because I had been bow hunting for a number of years before that, because it all happened so fast that everything just went on automatic.
Yeah.
And sometimes you overthink things sometimes, and I didn't even have time to do that. So I told everybody the only reason I killed that deer was because it happened so fast. I didn't have time to screw it up. So
yeah. It's so funny when something like that happens, and then versus the deer that you hunted for 2 years and never saw.
Right, exactly. Yeah,
complete polar opposites of how that can work.
For sure.
What's a bigger adrenaline rush? Seeing a world-class buck, or watching that buck fight the other younger buck? What was more of an adrenaline rush?
I'm not sure. I think they're pretty well equal. I mean, it's just the watching that buck fight. That was a once in a lifetime thing, because but it happened, and you don't think about it when it's happening. But yeah, but then anytime you're in the woods and you look up and there's a 200-inch buck walking towards you, that's hard to top. So
yeah, that's absolutely. Well, Ron, I honestly can't thank you enough here. I've really enjoyed chatting with you here all this morning. I usually give everyone an opportunity for folks to track you down. I don't know if you want that, but are you still writing for North American Whitetail?
Yes, I'm still writing for North American Whitetail. primarily for them now. And but yeah, over the years I developed kind of a lack of a better term, a network of people in Illinois. And anytime a big buck gets shot from a taxidermist or whoever else, I get a phone call. You know, a few years ago I got a call from a taxidermist down east central Illinois, and a guy had it was a gun kill, and a guy had shot this buck, and he was a coal miner, and he got off work and hunted that morning, and he didn't find the deer, and so he went back, that was on Friday. He didn't find it till Sunday because it was laying in some water and so forth, but he shot this buck, took it to the taxidermist, just left it there for the taxidermist. The taxidermist got there and started going through these things and about had a heart attack, and he called me up, and it was a net 197-inch typical.
Wow.
And the guy that shot it didn't have a clue what he'd shot at
Wow.
all. But I've got, a lot of people, I mean, even right now I've got a lot of people who will contact me if a big buck hits the ground, and then I'll talk to them and see if they want to do an article for North American on it. So
yeah. Real quick too, just so we put a button on the iconic buck there. Who ended up shooting it, and what did it score? And I'm just so put a button on it.
Kelly Riggs from Clinton ended up killing it, and he shot it, and it was a refuge area next to where he was hunting. The buck came out, and he shot it, and it ran back in the refuge area that evening, and he thought he missed. In fact, he didn't even look for his arrow. He thought he missed. He went back the next morning, hunted the same stand, and when he got down, he thought, well, go try to find my arrow. He picked up the arrow, and it was completely covered with blood. He had pulled the shot off a little bit at 30 yards and hit it right in the jugular vein.
Oh my gosh.
And so he obviously went and found the buck at that point in time. But he killed that buck, and then I'll tell you, we about had to have a wake after that because there's so many people who've been hunting that buck for so long that we couldn't believe he was dead, that kind of thing.
It was a moment of closure for a lot of people.
Yeah, for sure. But that's probably, one of the, it was all part of the special hunt, and that whole thing, like I said, it was so much fun, and everybody enjoyed it so much. It's just crazy,
Yeah.
And the young kids in the area, I call them young kids, they were like 18, 20 years old. If you got drawn in for a week, X number of people, you had to check in every morning by 5:30. If you didn't check in, there might be half a dozen people didn't check in. Well, we had a mini drawing right then and fill those openings for that day, just for that one day. So the local guys, they would come out to that drawing, and they could get drawn in for one day. And even if they drew a week, they could get their doe killed ahead of time that way.
Oh, yeah.
And so but a lot of those local kids that were kids back then, I run into them now at the deer shows, and first words out of their mouth is that was the most fun they ever had deer hunting on that project. So,
I mean, that's got to make you feel good that you allowed so many different opportunities by managing it in a very new way, and for those people to come up, however many years later and say that was my favorite hunting of all time, and you were a big part of allowing that to happen.
Yeah, it was just so much fun, and everybody enjoyed it, and I had a good time, and for the most part, everybody got along well and just had a good time. So that's what it was all about. So,
well,
and it was a successful herd reduction program. So.
Right. Yeah, it accomplished every goal for
Right.
every serious hunter, and also the main objective. Well, Ron, I really appreciate it once again, and I thoroughly enjoyed it.
No problem. I enjoyed being here.
There you guys have it. Thank you so much to Mr. Ron Wilmore for allowing us to air this VHS footage. Truly incredible. I want to say thank you to Moultrie, Onyx, Hawk Optics, and Painted Arrow for supporting the show, and we will see you next week. See ya.